It's strange, isn't it? How love can turn into a weapon so quietly you don't even realize when you've started bleeding. The night she left, the rain wouldn't stop. It poured against my window like the world itself was trying to wash me away. I remember her last words, trembling, heavy with guilt. "I have to marry him, Aiden. My family needs me." And just like that, I became a ghost. Not because she killed me, but because she made me watch her live a life I had no place in. They said her marriage saved her family, that she did it out of duty, out of love. But no one saw what came after. No one saw the rot behind their golden smiles, the empire built on deceit, and the man she swore to love slowly destroying her from within. And me? I didn't plan to ruin them, but sometimes fate gives you a choice, to forgive and vanish, or to return as the consequence they thought they'd escaped. So I did. I came back not as the boy she left behind, but as the reason her family lost everything. The first time I saw her, she was sitting by the window, sunlight dripping through the glass, catching in her hair like gold dust suspended in air. Her fingers moved gently over the sketchbook, tracing petals that weren't there. The classroom smelled of turpentine and wet paint, yet somehow, around her, it felt like rain after a drought. Clean, alive, dangerous in its simplicity. I remember thinking she didn't belong there. Not among people who painted to prove themselves. She painted because she needed to breathe. And maybe that's what drew me in. I had forgotten what breathing felt like. I was painting storms that day. Thunder, darkness, waves crashing over something unseen. My hands shook slightly. They always did when I painted from memory. Then her voice cut through the noise. "Your storm looks lonely," she said. I looked up. She was smiling, hesitant but curious. Like someone touching a flame for the first time, not sure if it would burn or warm. "It is," I replied. She tilted her head. "Then why paint it?" I paused, brush hovering midair. "Because it's real." She didn't argue. She just nodded, as if she understood the kind of pain that doesn't need explanation. That was the first time she spoke to me. And from that moment, something quiet inside me began to shift. Not bloom, not break, just turn toward her, like the way flowers bend to the sun without realizing it. A week later, I found her sitting at the same window, sketching the same flower, but this time she spilled her coffee across the table. It spread like sepia over her drawings, blurring the petals into brown stains. She panicked, grabbing tissues that only made it worse. Without thinking, I handed her my paint rag. "Here," I said. She looked up, embarrassed. "You again. Seems like fate," I said, half joking. She smiled. Small, genuine, the kind that softens something sharp in your chest. We ended up sitting together that afternoon, drying the ruined pages with the hairdryer near the sink. She laughed when I told her I paint storms because they don't expect you to fix them. And I laughed when she said she drew flowers because they die anyway, and that's what makes them beautiful. I didn't know it then, but we were already learning each other's language. Mine was silence. Hers was hope. We started sharing a corner of the studio every day after class. She'd hum softly while sketching, and I'd pretend not to listen. Sometimes she'd glance at my canvas and say things like, "You always paint the sky too heavy," or, "You're afraid of bright colors, aren't you?" I'd tell her she used too much yellow. She'd stick her tongue out in response, and somehow that became our rhythm. Quiet critiques woven into something that felt dangerously close to belonging. One evening, she stayed after everyone left. The lights hummed above us, the air thick with the smell of turpentine. She asked, "Why do you always paint rain?" I said, "Because it hides the tears." She didn't laugh. She didn't pity me. She just walked closer, her shadow falling across my canvas. "Then let me add sunlight," she whispered, dipping her brush into my palette. A streak of gold appeared over my storm, uneven, trembling, but alive. It was the first time someone ever touched my painting. It was also the first time I didn't mind. Days bled into weeks. We started walking home together, not intentionally, just two paths that happened to lead in the same direction. She lived near the bridge that cut across the river. She always stopped halfway, leaning against the railing, watching the water move. "People think rivers flow in one direction," she said once, "but look closer. Parts of it always circle back." I didn't realize then that she was describing herself. I began sketching her in secret, not her face, but her gestures. The way she tucked her hair behind her ear, the way her eyes softened when she looked at broken things. Fallen leaves, cracked glass, unfinished paintings. She saw beauty in what others overlooked. Maybe that's why she saw me at all. One rainy afternoon, the school lost power. The entire room dimmed to gray. We sat near the window, listening to the sound of raindrops hitting the tin roof. She drew on a napkin with my pencil, the lines shaky in the flickering light. "Do you believe people meet for a reason?" she asked. I wanted to say no, that people just collide by accident, and the universe doesn't care who gets hurt. But when I looked at her, the words wouldn't come. "Maybe," I said. "Maybe some people are meant to be lessons." She smiled faintly. "And some are meant to be the reason you start painting again." I looked at her drawing. It was a flower in the rain, bending but not breaking. "Maybe," I whispered, "some people are both." The lights came back on then, but I wish they hadn't, because in the dimness, we were honest. Two silhouettes learning how to see each other without color. She started calling me Storm, said it suited me. Quiet, unpredictable, never still. I called her Bloom, because she brought life even to the coldest corners of the room. She laughed at that, said it sounded too poetic. I told her maybe she made me that way. But the truth is, I didn't fall for her all at once. It happened slowly, like the way paint dries, unseen until you touch it. Every time she smiled, something invisible settled inside me. Every time she said my name, the silence didn't hurt as much. And every time she looked at me like I was something worth understanding, I forgot what it meant to be lonely. One evening, the sun was setting through the glass roof, painting the studio gold. She stood beside me, watching me work. Her hand brushed against mine. Light, accidental, electric. Neither of us moved away. The air between us thickened, fragile. She whispered, "You look different when you're not hiding behind your art." I turned to her, "And you look different when you're not pretending to be fine." For a moment, everything stopped. The brush in my hand, the noise of the city below, the steady rhythm of time itself. Then she stepped back, eyes darting away, cheeks flushed. "I should go," she said, but her hand lingered on the edge of my table, as if part of her didn't want to. When she left, she forgot her sketchbook. Inside, she'd drawn two figures, one holding an umbrella, the other walking beside it in the rain. There was a single line written beneath it. "Sometimes, storms need someone to walk through them." That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying her laughter, her words, the way her eyes softened when she looked at me. I painted until dawn, not a storm this time, but light breaking through clouds. For the first time, my canvas wasn't gray. It was gold. Her gold. When she saw it the next day, she didn't say anything. She just looked at it, really looked, and then looked at me. That was all it took. In silence, something passed between us. Fragile, unnamed, inevitable. Looking back now, I realize it wasn't love at first sight. It was something deeper. A recognition of two broken souls pretending to be whole. She said my eyes carried a sadness she wanted to understand. And I mistook her curiosity for care. Back then, I thought she was light. But light doesn't stay when darkness falls. She was only a reflection. Bright because I kept her near my fire, and like all reflections, she disappeared the moment I stopped shining. The greenhouse was our secret world. Her father had abandoned it years ago. Glass panels cracked like spider webs, air thick with damp earth and the ghosts of forgotten seasons. The vines had grown wild, curling around old beams, reaching desperately toward the weak light that filtered through the grime-streaked roof. She said it was dying. I said it was just waiting for someone to care again. Every evening after class, we'd come here, her with her sketchbook, me with paint-stained hands and the kind of silence that only made sense in her presence. The scent of wilted orchids and wet soil hung around us, heavy and familiar, like a memory that refused to fade. That night, she was sitting cross-legged on a broken bench, sketching a cluster of dried leaves. Her hair caught the faint glow of the lantern I'd brought, framing her face in gold. "You really think this place can be saved?" she asked, looking up. "I don't know," I said, adjusting a pot that had cracked down the middle. "But if it can, it'll take time." She smirked. "Everything worth saving does." She didn't know she was talking about herself. Sometimes she'd talk about her family, the way the laughter in their house had turned into arguments, the way her father stopped looking her in the eye when the company started collapsing. She said she hated how money could turn people into ghosts while they were still alive. She wanted to leave, to study art somewhere far away, where her name meant nothing and her family's debts couldn't reach her. She wanted to paint something that mattered. "You will," I told her one night, handing her a brush I'd carved her name into. She stared at it, then at me, and laughed softly. "You always say that like it's easy." "It's not easy," I said, "but it's possible. I'll help you get there." "Why?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "Because you deserve it." She shook her head, smiling faintly. "You're too kind to be real, Aiden." Kind. The word lingered in the air like the scent of rotting flowers. That is what they always call you before they use you, before they decide your heart is a resource they can spend. Rain began to fall, tapping softly on the glass above us. The sound filled the silence between our words. She moved closer, hugging her knees. "I used to come here with my mom," she said. "She loved orchids, said they were stubborn. They bloom even when you forget them for months." "Maybe that's why they're still here," I said. She smiled sadly. "Maybe." She reached out to touch one of the flowers, the petals brown at the edges. Her fingers trembled slightly. "What if I never get out?" she whispered. "What if I end up like them, trapped, waiting for something that never comes?" Without thinking, I took her hand. "You won't," I said. "I'll make sure you don't." The lantern flickered. The rain grew heavier. She didn't pull away. We spent more nights there after that. Sometimes we'd talk until dawn, about the meaning of art, the sound of forgiveness, the way people ruin things they claim to love. Other nights, we didn't talk at all. We just sat in silence, our shoulders brushing, the air warm with unspoken things. I started painting there too. Not storms this time, but her. Not her face, but her essence. The way her presence softened the decay around her. How her laughter echoed against broken glass like a song trying to mend itself. She didn't know I was painting her, but I think she felt it. One evening, I caught her sketching me instead. My hands, my eyes, the way I looked when I thought she wasn't watching. When I noticed, she blushed and hid the page behind her back. "You're not supposed to see it," she said. "Why not?" "Because it's not finished." Neither were we. There was one night I'll never forget. The rain had been relentless for hours, flooding the edges of the greenhouse. The lantern light flickered weakly, fighting the wind sneaking through the cracks. She sat beside me, her sketchbook open on her lap, pages rippling with damp air. She looked different that night, quieter, as if something heavy was pressing against her ribs. "My father might lose everything," she said. "They're talking about bankruptcy, selling the house, even this place." I turned toward her. "Then I'll help, whatever it takes." She laughed bitterly. "You say that like you could fix it." "I can try." She looked at me then. Really looked, eyes shining, tired, full of something I mistook for love. "You shouldn't," she whispered. You don't owe me that." "I know," I said, "but I want to." She didn't answer. She just leaned forward, resting her forehead against mine, our breaths mingling in the cold air. And then she kissed me. It was soft at first, hesitant, like a question neither of us knew how to answer. But then it deepened, desperate, trembling, tasting of tears and rainwater. Her hands gripped my shirt as if she was drowning, and I was the only thing keeping her afloat. When she finally pulled away, her eyes were wet, her voice barely audible. "I'm sorry," she said. "For what?" She shook her head. "For everything I can't tell you." We sat there in silence, the rain pouring harder, echoing against the glass like applause for something breaking. I reached for her hand again, but she pulled it back, staring at the ground. She was slipping away even then, and I was too blind to see it. She talked again, softly. "If I ever leave, will you hate me?" "No," I said immediately. She smiled faintly. "You should. It'd make it easier." "I don't think I could." "Then you'll get hurt." "Maybe," I said, "but at least it'll be because of you." That made her laugh. A small, painful sound. "You're impossible," she whispered. "You make everything sound like poetry." I wanted to tell her that's what she was to me. Poetry, written in a language only I could read. When the storm finally passed, dawn began to crawl across the sky, pale and cold. She was leaning against my shoulder, half asleep. I watched her breathe, her lips parted slightly, her hair tangled around her face. In that moment, I thought I could love her forever. Not the idea of her, but her. The girl who dreamed of sunlight while living in shadows. I wanted to tell her that. But something stopped me. Maybe it was the way her hand twitched in her sleep, like she was holding on to something that wasn't me. Maybe it was the quiet between her heartbeats, a silence that felt borrowed. I didn't know then that the promise I heard in her kiss wasn't real, that the warmth she gave me was only borrowed from a future she'd already chosen without me in it. Weeks passed. Her visits became less frequent. She said she was busy helping her father, meeting investors, trying to keep the company alive. But I knew something had changed. Her laughter was thinner, her smiles more forced. The last time we were in the greenhouse, the orchids had all wilted. Their stems were blackened, petals scattered like ashes across the floor. She stood among them, tracing the cracks in the glass. "I hate endings," she said softly. "Then don't end it," I said. She turned to me, eyes glistening. "It's not up to me this time." There was so much I wanted to say, to ask what she meant, to beg her to stay, but the words wouldn't come. Instead, I just watched as she took one of the dead orchids, pressed it between the pages of her sketchbook, and said, "So, I don't forget." She left before sunset. I stayed behind, staring at the empty space she'd filled with light. Later, when I returned alone, I found something on the table. Her paintbrush, wrapped in a torn piece of canvas. On it, she had written in pencil, "You taught me how to mix colors to capture loneliness." That was all. No goodbye, no explanation. Just that. I kept that brush for years, even when I stopped painting. Because for a while, it reminded me of who I was before she left. Before kindness became a weakness, before promises became weapons. Looking back now, I realize that Night in the Greenhouse wasn't the beginning of love. It was the beginning of debt. One I didn't know I'd spend years paying. I thought her kiss meant forever. But it was really a farewell disguised as a promise she never planned to keep. It began with the silences. Small, almost unnoticeable at first, like cracks in glass that catch the light but don't shatter. She stopped answering calls in front of me, stopped laughing at the things she used to find funny. When we talked, her eyes would drift toward the window, as if the city outside was whispering something she couldn't ignore. At first, I told myself it was stress. Her father's business was falling apart, the newspapers were full of quiet scandals, company shares sinking like stones. She always said her family was built on legacy. Now, I could see it was built on debt. But it wasn't just that. There was something else behind her eyes. A new kind of exhaustion. A fear she wouldn't name. We still met in the greenhouse, though it no longer felt like ours. The orchids were gone, replaced by stacks of legal documents and her father's old briefcases. She sat there one night, scrolling through her phone, her face glowing pale in the light of the screen. "Who are you texting?" I asked. She didn't look up. "Just someone helping my dad." I tried to smile. "Since when does your dad need help from someone who messages at midnight?" That made her pause. Her thumb froze mid-scroll, her eyes lifting to mine, a flicker of guilt, quickly hidden. "You wouldn't understand," she said. And maybe she was right. Because the girl who once spoke of dreams and colors was now speaking in numbers and deadlines. Days passed like slow bruises. She came late, left early. When she did show up, her phone never left her hand. I started painting again. Not storms, but walls. Blank, empty walls that looked too much like her silence. One night, she finally spoke. We were sitting in the half-light, the air heavy with the smell of rain-soaked earth. "There's someone you should know about," she said, her voice trembling slightly. I looked up. "Someone. His name is Ethan Vale." The name hung in the air, sharp and metallic. I'd heard it before. The Vale family owned half the city. Their company built empires and buried the people who stood in their way. "He's helping my father," she continued. "How?" She hesitated, then said, "He's offering to clear our debts, to save everything we've worked for." I frowned. "That's generous. What does he want in return?" She went silent. Too silent. Then she looked up, eyes glistening. "Me." At first I laughed, the kind of laugh that comes from disbelief, not humor. "Come on," I said. "That's not funny." But she didn't smile. She just looked down, twisting the hem of her sleeve, her silence louder than thunder. The laughter died in my throat. "You're not serious," I whispered. Her voice broke. "He proposed last week." The room spun. The rain outside grew louder, crashing against the glass, drowning out everything except the sound of my own heartbeat. "You told him yes?" She didn't answer. That was answer enough. I stood up, pacing, my hands trembling. "So that's it? You're just going to sell yourself to save them?" Her eyes snapped up. "Don't say it like that." "Then what do I call it?" She flinched, the tears welling up but never falling. "You don't understand, Aiden. My father's going to prison. My mother, she's sick. The board's threatening to take everything. If this doesn't happen, we lose it all." "So you sacrifice yourself?" I shot back. "For what? For people who only remember you when they need saving?" She pressed her palms to her eyes, shaking. "It's not about them. It's about responsibility, about doing what's right." "What's right?" I said, stepping closer. "And what about what's real? What about us?" That word, us, hung between us like a dying flame. She looked up, her eyes wet but firm. "There is no us anymore if my family loses everything." Her words didn't just hurt, they hollowed me out. The storm outside intensified. Wind rattled the glass panels, scattering petals across the floor. She stood, wrapping her coat around herself as if the act of leaving could shield her from the truth of what she just said. "Ethan can fix this," she said quietly. "He has the power to make it all go away." I stared at her, realizing something I didn't want to believe. She wasn't doing this out of love. She was doing it out of fear. "Do you even like him?" I asked. Her lips parted, but no sound came out. That silence, it told me everything. I walked toward the table where she had left her phone. It buzzed. The screen lit up with a message. "Ethan Vale. We'll talk tomorrow. I'll take care of it. Don't worry, love." My heart stopped. Love. I turned to her. "He calls you that?" She froze. "Aiden, don't..." "Don't what?" I interrupted. Don't realize that I was never enough? Don't see that you've already chosen him?" Tears spilled down her cheeks. "I didn't choose him. I'm trying to survive." I took a step back, laughing bitterly. "Survive? You think marrying a man like that will save you? He'll own you. He'll break you." She shook her head violently. "You don't know him. Neither do you." The thunder rolled above us, shaking the roof. And in that moment I understood. Love, in her world, wasn't about truth or choice. It was about debt. She walked toward the door, clutching her phone like a lifeline. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I didn't want you to find out like this." I couldn't move. My chest felt like it was caving in. "When were you going to tell me?" I asked, my voice cracking. "After the engagement? After the wedding?" She hesitated. After it was too late. The rain poured harder, washing the color from the sky. She turned back once, her eyes searching mine. Maybe for forgiveness, maybe for permission to keep walking. But I had none to give. "Goodbye, Aiden," she said. And then she left. I stayed there for hours, long after she was gone. The greenhouse felt smaller, emptier, like it couldn't breathe without her in it. I sank to the floor beside her abandoned sketchbook, flipping through pages that smelled faintly of her perfume. On the last page, she'd drawn a girl standing between two paths, one leading into light, the other into darkness. Underneath, she'd written a single word: choice. I wanted to hate her. I wanted to believe she was selfish, cruel, calculating. But all I could see was the girl who once drew flowers in the rain, the one who said orchids bloom even when you forget them. Maybe she thought she was saving her family. Maybe she didn't realize she was killing me in the process. A few days later, the news broke. Vale Industries to merge with Lorne Holdings. Ethan Vale and Lorne Harris to wed this winter. Her photo was everywhere. Smiling, radiant, perfect. The headlines called it a merger of hearts and empires. But I knew the truth. It wasn't a love story. It was a transaction. And I was the unpaid debt. That night, I returned to the greenhouse one last time. The storm had passed, but the air was cold and heavy. I found one of her paintbrushes still sitting in a jar of muddy water, forgotten. I dipped it into the paint, pressing it against the canvas. No more storms, no more flowers. Just a single image, a girl made of glass, standing before a door she couldn't close. The brush trembled in my hand. Love, I realized, was a kind of currency, and she had spent mine without asking. I didn't cry that night. I just watched the paint dry, layer by layer, sealing every emotion beneath it until nothing remained but the quiet hum of regret. Outside, the rain began again, soft, forgiving, almost kind. Maybe that's what she thought she was doing, saving what could be saved. But the thing about saving one world is that you usually have to destroy another. And I was the world she chose to destroy. The cafe smelled of burnt espresso and rain, the kind of scent that clings to your memory like regret. I sat by the window, my hands wrapped around a chipped mug, watching the screen mounted above the counter. The news anchor's voice was honeyed, reverent. Today marks the union of Ethan Vale, heir to the Vale conglomerate, and Liana Hart, daughter of the once renowned Hart Enterprises. Her name still stung when spoken aloud. The camera cut to her, walking down the aisle, the world at her feet, draped in silk and diamonds. Every step she took felt like a knife drawn slowly across the memory of us. Her smile was perfect, practiced, empty. I almost didn't recognize her beneath the layers of white and wealth. The customers clapped when the groom kissed her. I just stared. My reflection in the cafe window looked older, hollowed out by disbelief. Outside, the rain pressed against the glass like 1,000 tiny hands trying to pull me back to reality. No one in that cafe knew that the bride on television once sat across from me in this very booth, sketching a crooked sunflower and calling it hope. No one knew that her vows were written over the ashes of every promise she made to me. The barista called my name, but I didn't hear it. The screen was all I could see. The golden hall, the glimmering chandeliers, the world pretending this was love. Ethan Vale smiled like a man who'd just bought a dream. Liana looked like one who'd just sold hers. Her hand trembled as she took his. I saw it. Only for a second, but I saw it. The same hand that once brushed paint off my cheek in her father's greenhouse. The same fingers that used to trace constellations on my skin when she couldn't sleep. Now they wore diamonds. Cold, brilliant, heavy. The cafe door swung open and a gust of wind swept in, carrying the scent of wet asphalt and blooming wisteria, her favorite flower. For a heartbeat, I almost believed she'd walk in, that she'd sit across from me again, holding 2 cups of coffee like she always did when she was late. But only silence came. The night before her wedding, I painted her portrait for the last time. The canvas was almost alive, her eyes caught between longing and guilt, her smile fragile as glass. I didn't paint the veil. I painted her as I remembered her. Wild hair, paint-stained fingers, sunlight in her laugh. Every stroke was a confession. Every shadow a goodbye. When dawn broke, I carried the painting to the river behind my studio. The world was still sleeping, except for the wind and me. I set the canvas against a rock and struck the match. The fire licked at her image, devouring it slowly. The flames painted her face again, this time in gold and ash. I thought it would hurt less to let her burn, but as the smoke curled into the pale sky, I realized some ghosts only grow louder when you try to silence them. Back in the cafe, the television played the vows again on loop. I, Liana Hart, take you, Ethan Vale. Her voice shook just slightly. I caught it. No one else did. The anchor called it a fairy tale ending. Fairy tales never mention the bodies buried beneath the castle walls. My phone buzzed. A message from her. Don't watch. That was all it said. 2 words, a plea or a warning. I couldn't tell. I didn't reply. I just stared at the text until the letters blurred. The timestamp mocked me. Sent 3 minutes before the broadcast. She knew I would watch. She always knew. Outside, thunder rolled over the city. The kind that feels personal, like the sky itself has something to mourn. I stepped out of the cafe and into the storm, letting the rain soak through my coat. The streets glowed with the reflection of her wedding lights flashing from every shop display. Her face was everywhere. On magazine covers, billboards, screens. Liana Vale, they called her now. The name sounded wrong in my mouth. I walked until the streets grew quiet, until all I could hear was the rhythmic tap of water dripping from my hair. My studio stood at the corner, lightless and heavy with the scent of smoke from last night's fire. I unlocked the door. The air inside was cold, untouched. On the work table lay a single remnant, the corner of a canvas that hadn't burned completely, just a fragment of her painted eye staring back at me. Accusing, apologizing, I couldn't tell. I sat before the easel, staring at the blackened wood, the ashes scattered like dead butterflies. That's when it hit me. The quiet truth beneath all her lies. Love doesn't always end with hatred. Sometimes it just decays, turns into something colder. Purpose, the kind that makes you rebuild from the ruins. The kind that whispers, "Now it's your turn." The next morning, the city headlines screamed her wedding across every paper. But tucked between those glossy pages, I found something else. A tiny mention of a failed art studio auction. Mine. It didn't hurt as much as I expected, because deep down, I knew this was how stories like ours always end. The artist left nameless, the muse immortalized. I looked at my hands, the same ones that once trembled to touch her, and realized they were still capable of creating something new, something honest. I dipped my brush into black paint. It bled across the canvas like spilled ink. like the truth finally breaking free. This time, I didn't paint her. I painted the empty chair across from me, and for the first time, it felt real. The wedding replayed on every channel that week. The world couldn't stop watching her smile, but I had seen the truth behind it, the twitch in her lips, the hesitation in her eyes. I didn't need to destroy her. She was already trapped in her own masterpiece, gilded, flawless, lifeless. Me? I had fire left, and purpose. The kind that doesn't seek revenge, only remembrance. Because someday, when the lights fade and her last audience turns away, all that will remain are the stories. And in those stories, she'll always be the girl who sold her heart to save a name. And I'll be the one who watched it burn. When I stepped outside that evening, the rain had stopped. The air smelled clean, reborn. The sky was cracked open with color, gold bleeding into gray. It looked like the world had forgiven itself. I took one last glance at the cafe across the street, the same window where I once saw her reflection beside mine. This time, only my reflection looked back, and somehow, that was enough. 3 years. That's how long it took for silence to turn into armor. The boy she left behind, the one who believed in dreams and love and forever, he didn't survive the first winter without her. But from his ashes, something colder rose, something sharper. Me. It began quietly. I built my first company out of a rented apartment with cracked walls and flickering lights. The desk was second-hand. The paint still smelled of smoke from the night I burned her portrait. Every deal, every sleepless night, every late coffee tasted like vengeance diluted in ambition. At first, no one believed in me. Why would they? I was the boy whose art studio went bankrupt. The nobody who used to draw flowers while giants like Vale Corporation devoured the market. But grief has a strange way of making you relentless. While others sought comfort, I studied. While they slept, I mapped every weakness in their empire. Every unstable contract, every overlooked merger, every manager desperate enough to listen to someone like me. And soon, they did listen. I became the ghost whispering in their boardrooms, the quiet storm behind competitors' sudden rises. The same world that once watched her wedding now spoke a different name. Mine. The first time I saw her again was on a business magazine cover. Liana Vale, the silent strength beside a titan. She looked older, polished, but the light in her eyes, the one that used to laugh without sound, was gone. I stared at that picture for a long time, tracing her outline with my thumb. The world saw perfection. I saw exhaustion. There were rumors. Ethan Vale's company was bleeding money, internal betrayal, data leaks, clients vanishing overnight. The press called it a series of unfortunate coincidences. But the truth, the mole was me. It started with an email. A junior accountant from Vale's subsidiary reached out, complaining about underpaid wages and unethical reporting. I listened, offered help, then bought his silence. With kindness first, then with money. He became my first key. From there, the doors opened one by one. I infiltrated through trust, through empathy, through every gap they didn't think to guard. They had built their empire on arrogance. I dismantled it with patience. Every file I stole felt like reclaiming a piece of myself. Every contract I sabotaged whispered her name. And yet, even as I watched Ethan Vale's empire begin to crack, there was no satisfaction. Only quiet. Only the sound of rain hitting glass as I stared out my office window at the city that once belonged to him. One evening, I received an invitation. From Vale Corporation. Subject: potential partnership meeting. A trap, maybe, or fate's cruel sense of humor. Still, I went. The meeting was scheduled in their glass tower, the same one that once broadcasted their wedding live to the world. I stepped into the elevator, my reflection splintered by the mirrored walls. My heart didn't race. It was steady, cold, rehearsed, When the doors opened, the scent of expensive perfume hit me first. Then I heard her voice. "Thank you for coming, Mr. Wren." Liana Vale. She stood at the end of the conference table, her posture perfect, her smile restrained. It had been 3 years, but she still carried herself like sunlight trying to survive beneath storm clouds. Her hair was shorter now, her wedding ring gone. I didn't ask why. "Your proposal was interesting," she said, flipping through the documents I'd sent. Fake ones, of course. A front, a test. Her tone was professional, but her eyes betrayed something softer, something fractured. "Interesting," I replied. "Isn't the same as good." She looked up. For a moment, the years between us vanished. "You've changed," she said quietly. "So have you," I answered. "Except you used to tell the truth when you smiled." The air froze between us. She closed the file slowly. "If you came here to punish me, I came here to do business." A lie, but it sounded convincing. The meeting ended after 30 minutes. We shook hands, hers trembling just enough for me to notice. Her perfume lingered on my sleeve long after I left. That night, I watched the rain fall from my office again. I wondered if she did the same, from her side of the city. Old habits die hard, especially the ones soaked in memory. Weeks passed. Vale Corporation continued to collapse. Anonymous leaks, failed mergers, government investigations. Ethan Vale was no longer the golden heir. He was a man drowning in his own empire's greed. And Liana, she disappeared from the headlines. Until one morning, I found a letter slipped under my office door. No sender's name, just my name written in her handwriting. Careful, trembling. Inside, a single line. "Was this your justice or your goodbye?" No accusation, no anger, just a question heavy enough to crush the chest it reached. I didn't reply. Instead, I attended Vale's bankruptcy hearing a month later. The courtroom was packed, reporters lining every wall. Ethan Vale looked smaller in person, his arrogance stripped bare. His lawyers whispered, his investors shouted, and her. She sat behind him, expression unreadable. When the verdict came, I didn't look at him. I looked at her. For the briefest second, our eyes met. No words, no gestures, just the hollow acknowledgement between two people who had both destroyed something beautiful. One out of necessity, the other out of pain. After the hearing, I found her outside, standing in the rain without an umbrella. She didn't seem to notice me at first. "Liana," she turned. Her eyes shimmered, not with tears, but reflection, like the sky itself had been captured in them. "So it was you," she said softly, "all this time." I didn't deny it. "You once said marrying him would save your family." She laughed, a sound half broken, half beautiful. "And you became the reason they lost everything." Silence, the kind that carries both confession and forgiveness. "You hate me that much?" she whispered. "I don't hate you," I said. "I just stopped protecting what destroyed me." She took a step closer, the rain tracing down her face like pen strokes. "Then what do you feel now?" I thought about it. The years, the sleepless nights, the revenge that had turned into routine. "Nothing," I said, "and that scares me more than hate ever did." She nodded, as if that answer hurt worse than blame. "Ethan's gone," she said after a pause. "He left, took what was left of the money, the company, disappeared." "So now you're free," I said. Her lips trembled. "No, just empty." A car horn blared in the distance, cutting through the rain. We stood there, two ghosts in a storm we both created. Then she reached into her purse and handed me something, a folded piece of paper. "Your painting," she said. "I couldn't destroy it." My chest tightened. "I burned it." "You burned one," she said. "I kept another." When I returned home that night, I unfolded the paper. Inside was a photograph of the painting, the last one I ever did of her before the fire. Her face captured in colors I didn't remember mixing, but beneath the photo was something else. A small note written in her old handwriting. "You were my truth. I just couldn't afford it." I sat there, the room silent except for the rain tapping against the windows. I had spent 3 years tearing down her world. And yet, in that moment, I realized she'd never left mine. The next morning, news spread of Ethan Vale's arrest. Fraud, embezzlement, lies built on lies. The city devoured his fall like wolves. As I watched the headlines flash across my screen, I should have felt triumphant. But all I felt was tired, because somewhere deep down, I understood. Destroying him had never been my victory. Surviving her was. That evening, I stood by the river, the same one where I had burned her portrait 3 years ago. The air smelled of wet earth and renewal. I held the photograph she'd given me and let the wind take it. It fluttered for a moment, then disappeared into the current. Some endings don't need fire, some deserve silence. They say revenge changes you. They're wrong. It doesn't change you. It reveals who you've always been when love is stripped away. And me? I was never the villain, never the hero, just the artist who learned that sometimes destruction is another form of creation. The boy she left had died. The man I became was her husband's silent ruin. But tonight, standing by that river again, I felt something I hadn't in years. Peace. And maybe, just maybe, the first brushstroke of a new beginning. The night smelled of champagne and expensive regret. The ballroom shimmered with light, chandeliers like captive constellations, violins humming above the laughter of people who measured worth by the price of their smiles. I never liked these events. But tonight, I had a reason to be here. I was no longer the man people overlooked. Now, they whispered my name with a mixture of respect and unease. Aiden Wren, the quiet architect of a rising empire. A rival too controlled to be trusted. And somewhere in that glittering sea of silk and deceit, she stood. Liana. It had been almost a year since the Vale Corporation collapsed, since Ethan Vale's name had become synonymous with disgrace. And yet, when I saw her, standing beside him, dressed in red, it felt as though no time had passed at all. That color. Crimson, alive, violent. The color of confession and guilt. It suited her too well. She hadn't noticed me at first. Her husband's voice, loud, slurred, full of false triumph, filled the room as he boasted to anyone who would listen about his next big deal. A lie, of course. I'd already made sure there would be no next deal. I watched her from across the room, the way you might watch an old painting through cracked glass. Still beautiful, but distant, damaged. She held her champagne like a shield. Her eyes wandered, never resting on me, until they did. It was only for a second. But I felt it. The flicker of recognition. The quiet inhale. The soft, devastating stillness that follows when ghosts realize they've met again. When our eyes met, the orchestra's sound blurred into static. The world around us faded. Just her, just me, and the weight of everything unspoken. She looked away first. She always did. But fate, or irony, or some cruel combination of both, decided we would meet again that night. A waiter brushed past me, spilling a drop of wine onto my cuff. I turned toward the balcony to escape the noise, the heat, the pretense. Outside, the city sprawled beneath the glass railing, alive, glittering, uncaring. The night air was cold, sharp against my skin. I leaned on the marble banister, letting the wind sting where her memory used to ache. And then, I heard her voice. Aiden? Soft, shaking. The syllables caught somewhere between disbelief and fear. I didn't turn immediately. I let her stand there, the silence between us stretching like a wound reopening. When I finally faced her, the chandelier light spilled through the balcony doors, painting her in gold and shadow. Her red dress caught the wind, fluttering like flame. "Liana," I said, her name tasting strange after years of avoiding it. For a moment, neither of us moved. The city lights flickered below, the orchestra swelled behind us, and in that small pocket of air, time paused. "You shouldn't be here," she whispered, voice barely audible over the wind. "I could say the same to you." Her eyes darted to the ballroom, then back to me. "Ethan doesn't know." "Ethan doesn't care," I interrupted. "Not about you, not about this." She flinched just slightly. The truth always lands hardest when it comes from someone who used to say it with love. "You've changed," she said finally, her voice trembling but her gaze steady. "Change is what happens when you burn," I replied. Her lips parted, then closed again. I saw it, the guilt flickering behind her eyes, the words she wanted to say but didn't have the courage to release. She took a step closer. "I didn't know what else to do, Aiden. My family needed saving," I finished for her. I remember. The memory cut through the air like glass, her voice shaking the night she told me about Ethan Vale, her promise that it was only for survival. And I had believed her. The sound of laughter echoed from the ballroom. Ethan's laughter. It rolled through the air, careless and cruel, until it reached us. She looked down, shame darkening her cheeks. "He's drunk," she said quietly. "He's been like this for months." "So now you're his shadow," I said, "following him to these rooms, smiling for the cameras, pretending nothing's broken." Her jaw tightened. "You don't know what I've been through." "Then tell me," I said. "Tell me what it cost you to wear his ring, to watch him destroy everything you said you wanted to save." Her breath hitched. For a second, she looked like the girl I once met in the greenhouse, small, trembling, desperate to make the world believe she was strong. "I thought you hated me," she said. "I did," I answered truthfully, "until I realized hate takes effort, and you're not worth that anymore." The words came out colder than I intended, but maybe cold was all I had left to give. She blinked rapidly, a single tear threatening but never falling. "I'm sorry," she whispered. And for a second, just a fragile, traitorous second, I wanted to believe her. But lies have a way of sounding softer when spoken by the person who first taught you what love felt like. "I'm not angry," I said. "Lie." She wasn't sorry. "Lie." The wind moved between us, carrying the truth we couldn't say. Behind her, the glass doors opened. Ethan stumbled out, a half-empty glass in hand, his tie loosened and his arrogance intact. "Liana," he called, his voice thick with alcohol. "There you are. Don't keep our guests waiting." Then his gaze fell on me. Recognition flickered. "Ah, Aiden Wren, the ghost from the headlines." He laughed, a sound that dripped of mockery and insecurity. "I hear I have you to thank for my little business troubles." I smiled, polite, deliberate. "You're welcome." His grin faltered. "Careful, Wren. Not everyone gets away with betrayal." "Some of us do," I said, "especially when we've already paid for someone else's." The air between us crackled. For a moment, I thought he'd swing, but he just sneered and stumbled back toward the ballroom, muttering something about forgotten nobodies. When he was gone, Liana exhaled shakily. "You shouldn't provoke him." "Why not?" I said. "He's already burning. I'm just watching the fire." She turned toward the city, her reflection trembling in the glass. "Do you ever regret it?" "What?" "Destroying him. Destroying us." I stared at her. "You make it sound like I started the fire." She closed her eyes, a tear finally falling. "Maybe we both did." The orchestra inside began to play something slow, the same song I realized that had played at her wedding. The irony wasn't lost on either of us. "Do you remember this?" I asked quietly. Her lips curved in a sad smile. "You taught me to waltz to it, in the greenhouse." "And you taught me to believe in forever," I said. "We were both bad teachers." The silence that followed was suffocating. Not empty, heavy, full of things we wanted to say but couldn't. Finally, she stepped back. "I should go, then go," I said. She hesitated. Her hand brushed mine, barely, a ghost of touch, and it felt like memory igniting nerve. When she looked at me again, her eyes weren't the same. The fear was still there, but so was something else. Longing, maybe, or regret too old to name. "I never stopped thinking about you," she said. I wanted to laugh, to tell her that thinking doesn't count when love was turned into transaction. But I didn't, because she already knew. She walked back inside, her red dress trailing behind her like spilled blood, and I stood there, watching her disappear into the glow of chandeliers and false smiles. When I turned to leave, I caught her reflection in the glass one last time. Standing in the crowd, her eyes fixed on me. The way people watch fires they started but can't put out. I didn't look back, but I could still feel her gaze burning against my skin long after I stepped into the rain. The world outside was quieter, colder, cleaner, and as I walked away, I realized some ghosts don't haunt you. They wait for you to turn around. The world doesn't end in fire. It ends in quiet. Not the kind of quiet that soothes, but the kind that hums beneath your skin, like a held breath waiting to break. That's how the Veil Empire fell. Not with riots or headlines that screamed across the sky. It fell in silence. One leak, one whisper, one pen stroke that unraveled everything they'd built on glass and greed. And I was the whisper. I remember the day it began. Rain, soft and steady, sliding down the windows of my studio. The city outside was blurred, like a painting left unfinished. I stood there, brush in hand, watching the water trace the same path it always did. It was poetic, really. The same storm that had once watched me fall apart was now the witness to their collapse. My phone buzzed. A news alert. Veil Corporation under investigation for fraud allegations. The words glowed on the screen, sterile and impersonal, yet they felt like poetry to me. A poem written in headlines and stock prices. For weeks, the world talked. Executives disappeared. Partners withdrew. Investors turned like vultures, pecking at what was left. And at the center of it all stood Ethan Veil, the man who thought he could fix everything with money, charm, and inherited power. He couldn't fix this. The documents I'd sent, the ones he never saw coming, were precise, surgical. Each one placed like a scalpel on the softest part of their empire. The irony? He once told a journalist he admired me, called me a visionary in emotional realism. I suppose that's still true. I painted emotions on canvas. I painted revenge into reality. But it wasn't his face that haunted me. It was hers, Lila. Every time the news showed her, standing beside him at press conferences, her smile thinner, her eyes heavier, I couldn't look away. She wore grief like it was silk, practiced and graceful. The world pitied her. I couldn't, because I knew the truth. She had chosen her cage, and I had simply burned it down. Still, some nights I wondered if she could feel it, the ground giving way beneath her, and if she knew whose hand had pulled the final thread. One morning, I painted again for the first time in months. A mansion crumbling under twilight, its windows shattered, its gardens overrun with ash-colored roses. At the center, a single figure in red, small, fading, almost ghost-like. Her. I didn't mean to paint her, but she always found her way back onto the canvas, like a memory refusing to die. When I finished, I didn't sign my name. Some things aren't meant to be claimed. Then the call came. A gallery owner I knew, one who owed me more favors than I could count, told me the Veil estate was being liquidated. Art, furniture, jewelry, all up for auction. He laughed when he told me. Funny, right? You used to paint her. Now you could probably buy her portraits for cheap. I didn't laugh. The next morning, I went. The mansion looked smaller than I remembered from the photos. Not because it had changed, but because I had. Its gates hung open, rust creeping through gold. Reporters stood by the curb, their cameras cold and hungry. Inside, strangers wandered through marble halls, bidding on ghosts. I walked past the staircase where she'd once posed for magazines, past the piano she never learned to play. Every corner was dressed in decay. Dust instead of pride. Silence instead of laughter. In the main hall, I saw it. A painting. My painting. The one she bought years ago before everything fell apart. I had forgotten it existed. It was of two hands reaching through stormlight, almost touching but never quite meeting. She had once told me it made her feel less alone. Now it hung crooked on the wall, a red sticker marked for sale. I don't know what possessed me, but I bought it. Not to keep it, to bury it. When I left the auction, the sun had already begun to set. The sky burned with that strange golden hue that feels both alive and dying. People say revenge is fire. It isn't. It's frost, slow, creeping, quiet. It doesn't destroy you in a blaze. It freezes you until you forget what warmth feels like. That's what I realized walking down that hill, the painting wrapped in brown paper under my arm. I had won. And I felt nothing. Days turned into weeks. The news cycle moved on. New scandals replaced old tragedies. The Vale name became another cautionary tale whispered in business schools. Her father was arrested. Tax fraud, embezzlement, the usual. Her husband filed for bankruptcy and vanished overseas. And her? No one knew. Some said she'd fled the country. Others claimed she was living quietly in the countryside, away from cameras, away from everything. But I knew better. Lila wasn't someone who disappeared. She was someone who lingered, like perfume on skin, like regret in silence. One night, unable to sleep, I walked into my studio. The city outside was quiet, bathed in silver from the moon. My half-finished canvases leaned against the walls, watching me like witnesses. I set the painting, the one from the auction, on the easel. Unwrapped it slowly. The hands still reached for each other, still frozen in that eternal almost. I stared at it until the lines blurred, until my reflection melted into the strokes. Maybe that's all we ever were. Two people reaching, never touching, held together by the illusion of closeness, doomed by the truth of distance. The next morning, I took the painting to the river. The same river where we once walked hand in hand, our shadows overlapping on the water. The sky was overcast, the wind cold. I set the canvas against a rock and lit a match. The flame caught quickly, dancing across the edges like it had been waiting. As it burned, the colors twisted, blues into gray, red into black. The hands vanished first, then the light, then everything. And for a moment, I thought I heard her voice in the wind, soft, broken, almost prayerful. Aiden. I didn't turn. I couldn't tell if it was memory or madness. When the fire died, only ash remained. I let the wind take it. Back in the studio, I opened my journal, the one I hadn't touched since the night of her wedding. The pages smelled of turpentine and thyme. I wrote, "Sometimes revenge doesn't roar. It whispers and lets the world echo for you." I closed it, letting the words sink into silence. Outside, the first snow of the year began to fall, soft, slow, unannounced. And for the first time in 3 years, I didn't paint. I just watched, because maybe this was what peace looked like. Not forgiveness, not forgetting, just stillness. But as the snow gathered on my windowsill, one truth remained clear beneath the white. I had buried her world. Yet somehow, she still lived inside mine. It was a gray morning, the kind where the clouds seem too heavy to move and the air smells of wet asphalt and old paper. I was in my studio, fingers stained with paint, brush hovering over a blank canvas I didn't have the courage to touch. The silence was almost unbearable except for the occasional drip of rain against the windows. Then I heard her. Liana, not in the way I expected. No announcement, no hesitant knock. Just a voice, soft, unguarded, almost tentative, carried on the wind as it pressed through the cracked open window. Aiden. My heart stopped, not because I feared her, but because the years, the rage, the plans for revenge, none of it mattered when I recognized that single sound. The girl who had once traced sunlight across my canvas, whose laughter had once lit up the greenhouse, stood there in the doorway of my life again. She was no longer the polished, untouchable woman I had seen at galas or on screens. She was herself, fragile, raw, stripped of everything she had once clung to, including pride. Her hair fell loose around her shoulders, her eyes red from weeping, lips bare of the makeup that had always masked what she felt. And I remembered what she had been. The girl who drew flowers on torn paper, who whispered promises she might not keep, but kept enough to leave marks on your soul. She took a step inside, hesitant. The rain clung to her coat, making the fabric cling to her like a second skin. I didn't move. I let her approach, let her see me in the same way I had always seen her, unadorned, unflinching, real. "I finally understand," she said, her voice trembling. "I understand what you meant when you said love costs nothing. That giving doesn't demand repayment." Her words hovered in the room, heavy and full of regret. I let them hang there, because I had already built a life around the echoes of her absence. My heart had long ago hardened, tempered in the fires of solitude and quiet revenge. "Happiness?" she asked next, voice small. "Are you happy?" I shook my head slowly. "No," I said. "Happiness wasn't what I came for. Closure, maybe." She stepped closer, her hands shaking as they reached out. But she stopped short, unsure. The vulnerability in her posture reminded me of the nights in the greenhouse, of the whispered secrets and stolen smiles, of the first time she kissed me in the rain. That intimacy had been brief, a single flame burning in a room of shadows. And now she wanted something again. Maybe forgiveness, maybe reconciliation. Tears slid down her cheeks, tracing paths I remembered so well, and for a moment I felt a strange, unfamiliar softness. I had forgiven her long ago, in that quiet corner of my mind where I had placed every memory of us, both beautiful and painful. Forgiveness is not return. It is a release. A final gift you give to someone who never asked for it. I watched her cry. The sound of it was almost musical, a reminder that she too had suffered, that the choices she had made, to marry, to lie, to protect a world that never deserved her, had left her empty. "You saved me once, Aiden," she whispered, voice breaking, "and now you've destroyed me." I didn't turn. I didn't speak. Because sometimes the weight of silence carries more truth than any confession. The balance had been restored, in its own cruel, quiet way. She had lived through her choices. She had learned loss. And I had walked away unscathed, not because I wanted to hurt her, but because I needed to survive the love that once threatened to consume me. The rain outside picked up, drumming against the glass with steady insistence. Its rhythm matched the pulse in my chest, steady, deliberate. I stepped toward the door and opened it, letting the storm wash over me, cleansing the last remnants of what we had been. She followed my gaze to the storm, and for a second, the world seemed suspended. Two figures standing at the edge of past and future, between ruin and renewal. "You don't care," she whispered. "I did. I always had. But caring is not the same as returning. Love is not currency, and I had already paid my dues in heartbreak, fire, and solitude. I stepped into the rain fully, letting it soak through my coat and hair. Each droplet felt like the soft echo of years spent chasing shadows, of nights spent painting ruins instead of faces, of memories that refused to fade. "I care enough to let you go," I said finally, voice low but firm. Her lips parted, a breathless protest, but I had already taken the first step away. One step became two. Each step carried the weight of every broken promise, every whispered secret, every fire that had burned between us. I didn't look back when I left her in the doorway. The rain blurred her form into watercolor, her tears catching light like tiny fragments of glass. And yet, I could feel her watching me. A presence heavier than any chain, lighter than any ghost. The city outside was quiet, except for the storm. Streetlights flickered in puddles, neon signs reflected on wet asphalt like fractured memories. I walked until the building swallowed me, until her voice, trembling through the downpour, became a soft echo in my mind. You saved me once, Aiden. Now you destroyed me. And I did not turn, because maybe, just maybe, that is what balance looks like. When the one who begged to be saved finally learns the cost of desire, the weight of selfishness, the ruin that follows every choice, and the one who is left to watch, silent, steady, untouchable, carries only peace. I found myself later that night standing on the edge of the river. Its waters mirrored the stormy sky, gray and infinite, reflecting fragments of memories I could no longer untangle. I let my fingers trail in the current, feeling the cold bite, feeling the world move on without her. The studio behind me held canvases untouched for months, paint still wet from a day I never began, colors waiting for stories I had yet to tell. I understood, finally, that our story had ended not with fireworks or confrontations, but with quiet. A closure not demanded, but earned. The ruins of her choices, her empire, her marriage, her illusions, had been left behind, and she would rebuild someday in her own time. And I would paint again. Not her, not us. Just life. Just silence. Just the quiet echoes of a storm that once raged in both our hearts. Somewhere, beyond the rain and the distance, I knew she would survive. Just as I had. And in that survival, hers and mine, there was a strange, bitter, beautiful victory.